All right, folks, we're here once again to talk about, well, what we're going to talk about is pretty heavy here. Um, because I've been talking about like films that have been in the 200s to 300s in the canon, but we're going to talk about one of them besides No Country for Old Men that is in the top 100. Okay, so I'm going to start by saying it's a comedy. Because I'm kind of running that gamut right now. I wanted to talk about comedies. So, you know, um, we're going to start with that. And this movie's name is The Toxic Avenger. There you go. There's a lovely picture of the Toxie. And he is, in fact, I didn't know if you knew this or not, the first superhero from New Jersey. So, we're already starting off with a bang. I don't know why I get more gorgeous every day. Jesus, I should come with a warning label for God's sakes. You like that? I thought I'd put that on there just to give you guys a real treat of what I do on my part-time job. Anyway. All right. So, why is the Toxic Avenger in the top 100? It looks like a horrible piece of crap. Well, it is. And they make no bones about it. It is a very low-budget film for being in the top 100. I can think of a handful of others, maybe possibly Night of the Living Dead, the original, which I would think would be in the very high echelon of the top 100, if not in 120 or 130, somewhere in there. But Toxic Avenger is better than that. It was made by Tromaville. It is a company where if you're kind of a comedic director and you want to get a start, it's one of the best companies to start with. The boys from South Park got their start there with Cannibal the Musical, and James Gunn has done some stuff there. He's the guy that directed the first two Guardians of the Galaxies. Okay, just to give you an idea that this company is legit. But the Toxic Avenger talks about so much more about life. Okay. Okay, I would put this in the high 80s of greatest films of all time. This is in the high 80s. It's a lampoon. So let me define what the word lampoon means. And I'm not talking about National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. You probably heard that word a million times because you've watched the movie a million times during Christmas and you're like, what in the hell is that? Well, nobody has a definition for it. That is my lovely Monroe mug of Niagara, my favorite film of hers. If you've not seen it, go watch it. It'll change your life. That mousetrap. All right. So, I don't know where I was out here. I guess I was talking about Toxic Avenger. I'm sure. Oh, yeah. So why is it so good? Well, we're talking about a movie that not only defies expectations, but exceeds them so greatly that you're beyond impressed. The only other movie I've seen like this that was that low budget that did that was Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not into the whole B-movie scene yet, or what I like to call midnight movies. I think B-movie is a kind of a derogatory term for it, but it is its classic term, so I do use it for reference. Oh, I'm sorry, lampooning. That's what I was talking about. So what is lampooning? Again, there's no concrete definition for it, but I'm going to give you what my version of lampooning is, which is to be so unreal that by definition you are being real and you're making fun of realness in a way that is so grotesque in a form of sardonic nature, or in the sardonic nature, that it goes back to the original, which is that you're just being grotesque to be grotesque. So it's like a double-edged sword. You have on the one side that you are talking about life, but in a way you're not talking about life, but in a way you are talking about life, but in a way you're not talking about life. That's what it is to lampoon. But it's in its nature, it's supposed to be funny. Okay. This is most definitely a lampoon. It's a lampoon of 80s culture. It's a lampoon of exercise culture, preppy people, preps, or whatever you want to call them. Nerds, sub-societies, the blind. I mean, the list goes on and on. There is, just like the boys with South Park, there is nothing that is sacred in this film at all. I will tell you, if you do watch this movie, be forewarned, it is grotesquely violent, okay? In some ways, it even offends my delicate sensibilities, and you know if my delicate sensibilities are being offended, that there's something going on with that particular film. All right? Just to give you an example, they do shoot a dog to death. It's a blind girl's dog, you know, and they laugh about it. As I said before, this is not for the timid to watch, okay? You have to have a pretty deep sense of irony. You can't take things seriously at all. If you do, and you are butthurt easily, I would not in any way recommend you watching this film, because you will turn it off in about 3 seconds. But so why is it so good? I mean, that's what I mean. You know, you can do grotesque things, but that doesn't make the film good. Of course, that's what I would say to someone. But it goes beyond that. First of all, this is an 80s film that's talking about superhero culture. All right. It wasn't really talked about until The Watchmen, which, as I said before, is ironic because they started off with an antithesis to that genre before they even started off with the real genre. I mean, they had Batman movies and Superman movies before that, but nothing really intense like they do now. And Watchmen started all of that. So, but this isn't an antithesis, okay? And if it is, then it's so subtle that you have to really, really look below the surface, okay? And by antithesis, I mean that it is proving the opposite point of what the genre has stated. Like, for instance, let's take, for instance, Unforgiven, okay? It was an antithesis of the Western. Because the Western is about glitz and glamour, riding high, big mountain scenes, you know, the hero always righting the wrongs and blah, blah, blah. And Clint Eastwood started off by saying, this guy is no hero, and you should not like him at all, but you do, because you like the Western. But he's a grotesque man. And, you know, some of the dialogue that was stated demysticized the Western culture. Well, in essence, the Toxic Avenger is demysticizing, in some ways, the superhero culture, but in many ways, it's also propagating it by saying, hey, we can play with this, which is exactly what a lampoon is. It's saying, I am reality, but I'm not. Therefore, I am reality, but I'm not. Okay? So, you have that going. The mise-en-scene, as I've said before, I hope you know what the term is by now. But I'll explain it again in case this is your first video that you're watching. Is everything that you see and hear in a film is perfect. There's nothing that's wrong with the mise-en-scene in this film. It's perfect in every single way. I don't think that a lot of this was 100% intentional by the director, okay? I will be honest, I think that this is by far and away Tromaville's best picture. And yes, I do believe the director had a lot of creative say in this, but I do think that what ended up happening is this film became larger and more important than they ever expected it to be, if that makes sense. They were just there to make a silly film, and what ended up happening was something magical, which happens sometimes. I mean, you can be out, you know, shooting a film, and all of a sudden you're making something that's larger than yourself. You know, think about how many filmmakers go on a lifetime trying to make great films, and then the one film that they kind of throw away is the one that everybody's like, oh, absolutely, this is the best one I've ever seen. I mean, George Lucas in Star Wars didn't think the film was going to do very well. You know, but yet it's the film that everybody knows George Lucas by. They certainly don't know him by THX 1138 or American Graffiti. You know, they know him by that. And unfortunately, The Phantom Menace and the other two that shall remain nameless. The only reason I like Phantom Menace is because it is got the coolest lightsaber battles ever. And the soundtrack is pretty good. Jar Jar can literally be taken out. Like, if Lucas was going to do anything constructive for that film, he could just take out Jar Jar. Or at least make the dialogue better. That would be my tip for him. And the third one was good. It was definitely good. But it had some choppy dialogue too. But again, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Toxic Avenger. This film, as I said before, defies expectations, but it not only defies expectations and exceeds them, but you're so far from reality in this film that you have no choice but to jump into the world that they have portrayed for you. Okay? This is an extremely hard thing to do. Okay? That's why I say this film is magical, because unintentionally I think they did that. I think they went so grotesque that they actually made sense, if that makes sense. And again, I'm not impugning the director. I'm sure the director is a great director. But I think that some of this has a little bit to do with magic, less than just ground and pound directorial technique. Okay? And creating scenes and things like that, similar to what Kubrick would do in all of his films. But this is just a great film in every way, shape, and form. You're so far from reality. The only other film I have ever seen that is a comedy that does this well is a movie called Hudson Hawk with Bruce Willis. They just set it up from the beginning that you can't take this film seriously, and because of that, you're either forced to dislike it or simply accept that this is the premise of the film and that you have to watch it. That's why it's a cult classic, Hudson Hawk, and some people like it, some people don't. It takes a couple of viewings, though, before you really get into the idea, because they're lampooning, again, Hollywood in that particular case so badly that that you're forced to fall into it or not. Again, you're talking about a film that is, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's just that good. It's just that good. This is one of the few films on the top 100 that is not boring to watch. It's not such a technical masterpiece that you would just be bored to tears by watching it. I mean, you even take, for instance, Psycho, which is in the top probably 30 films of all time. I have no idea exactly where it's at. I'd have to think about it. But, that is a boring film in many ways. The pacing is set up to be rather tedious, okay, and to create great suspense. It is a little bit timed in its own time in the 50s and 60s, but it's still a pacing that you can watch now, so it's not unwatchable. But again, that's it's more of a technical piece by the director, but it's done in a horror genre, which makes it commercial. But Toxic Avenger is a completely commercial film that is exceedingly great. But again, you have to get past the fact that it's grotesquely violent. That is its claim to fame, and that is ultimately why some people will refuse to watch the film. And I mean grotesquely violent. I'm not even kidding you. They even have a warning before you watch the film that the film is grotesquely violent. Okay? But it's done with the idea that you're not supposed to take the film seriously at all. They don't want you to. Okay? So be forewarned. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can say about this particular film. Again, watch it. There are, if you have Roku, it's on one of the B-movie channels. All you have to do is pull up one of the many B-movie channels. You can watch it there. It's basically a forgotten film now. It's moved into like some kind of weird B-movie. Like, it probably doesn't even technically have a copyright, although it might. It might have a loose copyright by Lloyd Kaufman and the Tromaville team. They're just trying to make a bang for the buck out of that film. But it is great, and I highly recommend watching it. I'm sure you can download it on Prime. I'm sure it's there. Again, this is going to be worth your watch, but keep in mind that it is not for everyone, and it's certainly not for children to watch. So I do want to make that clear. It is a hard R-rated film, so be forewarned. All right. But again, if you have any questions about this film, or if you want to set up a viewing party, just let me know. All right. Thank you once again. Please subscribe to my channel. As always, it's Jeremiah Sterkel. on Instagram, Jeremiah Sterkel 81 on Pinterest. I'm starting to get a Twitter account. All right, so thank you and have a great day.